Um, in yoga, there are different styles of yoga, and one of the forms of yoga uses something called kriyas, which is just a way of moving energy around the body. They come in all shapes and sizes. Some are standing, some are seated, some are moving, some are static. But this one is basically called standing up and jiggling. It sounds like I've just made it up, but allow yourself to just bounce your knees a little bit, and then kind of let the shoulders be very relaxed. And see if you can just get a little bit of a wriggle all the way down to the wrists, and let the head bob up and down. If you can relax the jaw, you might even find that that kind of bounces up and down with you. And you'll notice that as I'm speaking, my breath is kind of bouncing along as well. So it's very simple. It doesn't have to be a big, it's just a little jiggle. Now, we're only going to do it for a couple of minutes, but you could be doing this for sort of 5 or even 10 minutes. And the sensation you get afterwards is kind of astronomically obvious what's going on with your body. It just tingles all over the place. Now, children love doing this. And we tend to sort of forget to do these things as we've grown up. When was the last time you stood at a bus stop or at the train station and just jiggled without causing a lot of concern from other bypassers? So in the yoga room, it's all okay. You just jiggle away quite happily. Close the eyes if you want. Challenge your balance a little bit. And then we'll just slow it down gently. And we'll take the feet deliberately at least as wide as the outside of the hips. And we're going to take that into twists. So we're just going to gently let the body move around. We're going to sway the hips a little bit and bend the knees. You can choose whether your head stays forwards or whether you turn it, keeping it in line with the chest. And another type of kriya. We're just tapping the back of the kidneys. That hand wraps around. A little bit of a slap. We're doing this really to kind of wake up the feet, the nervous system, from the head all the way down to your toes. I appreciate it does look a little bit bonkers when you've got a whole room full of people doing this. The safety of your own room. This is a nice one to do. Back again to just being steady and still. I'm going to use the brick and just place that gently between my ankle bones. I want to be able to keep the brick off of the floor. So I'm just going to have the feet parallel, pointing forwards. And then when you feel steady, take the arms up towards the sky on the breath in. Bring the palms together. Let the hands come down. Inhale up. And you might be moving faster or slower than me. That's not a problem. Got a couple more to crack in. Still squeezing the thighs very gently. And then we're going to take it up a notch. Come up onto tiptoes, still keeping the block between those ankle bones, and then take the hands up. Keep the heels lifted. You need to find something to focus your gaze onto, so you can become very focused on how your body's moving and keeping your balance, rather than letting your eyes move around the room. It's actually quite tiring to stand on your tippy toes for 1 whole minute. I came to the theory that stilettos would be a good idea. Beyond me. We'll take the hands up for the last time. And then as we bring the hands down, we'll lower the heels to the floor. We'll just let that block out of the way. Let's move it over to the side. And then we'll come up to the front of the mat. This time we'll bring the hips a little bit closer, the feet a little bit closer. So more sort of hip joint distance. We'll take the arms up high as we breathe in and take it into a simple forward fold. So I'm going to soften the knees a little bit as we lengthen out, draw the belly in. Bring the hands down. Fold onto the ribs, to the thighs. Bring the hands onto the hips again. Lengthen the body out and lift up. So we start to find out quite quickly whether our hamstrings are feeling tight this morning and our lower backs. Soften the knees a little bit. Control the slide down. Head come in last. Bring hands onto those hips to lift up. We'll come up one more time. And down one more time. I'm going to take another standing balance. So I'm going to move to about the middle of my mat and just make sure that I've moved all my blocks out of the way. I'll find something to focus on. Bring the feet together. And it's just a simple standing on one leg posture. So we'll take the weight into the left leg. Foot spread out a little bit. Draw the right knee up. Lift it high enough so you can take the hands and place them around the shin. And trying to keep the chest and hips pointing the same direction as the standing foot. And then we're going to see if we can draw the knee a little closer in towards the body. Now, as that happens, you want to be careful that the bottom leg doesn't start to bend too much underneath you. You want to press that down with kind of equal regard. So the lift and the press at the same amount. And we'll release and bring that foot down, and we'll do the other side. So that doesn't take long before the feet start to feel the effort of trying to hold ourselves up. We'll bring the feet together again, find that center, shift into the right leg, slowly draw the left leg up, and take your time, doesn't have to be quick to get there. You draw it in hopefully far enough that you can get your hands around the shin without leaning forward too much. As soon as you do that, you start to compromise your balance. And again, we'll start to squeeze. Release. And shake it all out. So we'll come back up to the front of the mat. Take a little breath. And we're going to come into a tree pose. So we're just going to take a sort of a baby version of that. Turn this way again. So we're going to take the weight into that left leg first of all. Slowly bring the right heel onto the ankle so you can turn the toes out to the side and see how that feels. And then we're just going to bring the foot deliberately onto the shin calf part of the leg. Because you can get used to just finding your balance point, jamming your leg into the top of the groin. And you're not really working the hips and the legs in the way that you potentially could do. So bringing ourselves down lower if this is not your normal place is actually a little bit trickier. And a lot of people talk about changing things up, but we're changing things up by actually changing things down. And then we can release. I personally find that that lower level version is much harder on the muscles around the top of the hip and the groin here. I have to work a lot harder than once I've brought my foot into my groin, it kind of rests there. That version, it has to work. So take a weight into the right leg. Heel comes up on the left and we turn the toes out and just find our balance point. Trying to keep the hips more into the center rather than sinking into the hip and letting it pop out to the side, which we're right underneath ourselves. And then we lift slowly. And press and hold. And then we can release. Shift out those legs. So we come down to the floor. We'll take a little breath. Actually, no, we won't. We'll do something different. Change of plan. Bring the feet back together again. We'll take another tree. This will be fun. I'm going to load into that left leg. Bring the heel up onto the ankle, turn the toes out. We'll take a little breath and bring the foot onto the side of the calf. So we'll take the hands down and out and up towards the sky above the shoulders. Now we're going to send the hips out towards the left and take a tiny little side bend over to the right. Just to challenge the feet, the sense of balance, nervous system, muscles. And we release. Doesn't take a lot, does it? And then we'll finish it off with the last side. We're going to hands in towards the heart. Shift the weight into the right leg. Left foot comes off, heel to the ankle. Find that balance point. Bring the foot up gently, place it. Let the arms come out wide and palms are just facing in, about the width of the shoulders apart. And then slowly let yourself come into the side bend. Which doesn't seem like it wants to work today. Last breath. And then we'll come back out. Shake it all out. It amuses me. It doesn't take an awful lot. So we'll come down to the floor. We'll take feet about hip distance apart and move into down dog. Just inhale, hands to the heart, roll flat back. Bring the hands to the floor, stepping back into a down dog. And allow yourself to do what you want to do in your down dog. If you want to hold it, you can hold it. If you want to wriggle, you can wriggle. I'm going to bend my knees quite substantially and then lengthen the spine out a lot more. And we'll flip forwards and bring those hands and knees into a nice tabletop position. Start to draw the chest forwards and roll the shoulders back. Tuck the tailbone, let the spine right up towards the sky as we draw the belly in. And coming back through. So you make sure the hands are underneath the shoulders. And you want to roll the shoulders back a little bit. So it's not an aggressive pull of the shoulders back, but we're just moving them away from the ears and out a little wider. See how that feels in the body. And then we're going to come into child's pose. So we're going to keep those knees the same distance apart as the hips. And we'll bring the hands underneath the forehead. So it's not sort of the biggest, strongest, deepest, widest child's pose. This is the narrow version, where the knees are more or less parallel with the hips. And you feel quite a big stretch in your lower back and the glutes, especially if they're tight. Try and relax the shoulders. All you need to do is breathe into your belly. It won't be easy. It will force the breath a little more into the ribs and the back, and you'll feel them open up a bit more than you would do in a normal breath. We'll slowly lift out of that. Let ourselves come back onto all fours, fingers towards the front of the mat. We're going to draw right foot forwards. So we want the toes and the fingertips to line up, keeping the hands on the ground. We'll try and keep the front shin vertical. And we'll just tuck the toes on the back foot underneath and take the leg as far back as you comfortably can. So quite a strong lunge. The foot needs to be, or the knee needs to be far enough out to the side so that the body can kind of sit down lower. At the moment, my knee is pretty much into the sort of the corner of my armpit. And again, the shin wants to be as vertical as it can be. So not only is it trying to avoid leaning forwards, but we're trying to keep it in that plane, moving towards the front, nice and vertical as well. So again, you might need to move the foot around if your knee tends to wander out a little bit further to the side. I'm just going to stay here for another sort of 15 seconds or so, breathing easy. Head position is kind of up to you, but if you can keep it lifted a little bit, that would be great. You don't have to crane it back, but just looking down directly to the floor and having your face in the plane, that means you're level. We'll step out back into the tabletop. So walking the back knee gently, bring myself back into that tabletop position, and then I'm going to bring the left knee forwards, make a little space. See if I can get both hands on the floor and slide that back foot as far away as I can. You can either do that by lifting the toes, or sorry, tucking the toes underneath and sliding it back. But if you've got enough slip in the mat, you might be able to just send it back anyway. Again, just trying to have the head in line. Now, I find this easy on one side, not so much on the other. I'm never entirely sure whether that's differences in the hip or differences in the leg or differences in the shape of the ribs, or maybe a bit of all those differences thrown in the pot together. And step that back into tabletop. Now, going to do something that looks similar to start with, in that I'm going to bring the knee through on the right, but I'm going to take the foot to the outside of the hand, and I'm going to have the heel just on the edge and let the toes hang out to the side a little bit. I'm also going to lift that back knee gently off the floor and ease that foot as far back as I can. And then as I untuck the toes, I'm going to allow myself to come into a little bit of a twist, bringing my hand onto that front thigh. See how that feels. Trying to lengthen out through the back leg a little bit. A little bit of pressure into the knee out to the side. Another few breaths here, and then we're going to take it a little deeper. But we're going to try anyway. Okay, now bring my left hand down to the floor. I'm going to move my right hand down to the floor. I'm going to move the left hand a little bit further out to the side, and then bring my hand back onto that thigh. I'm going to start to roll my left hip down to the floor. So I'm going to start to allow my hip to come down to the ground. And to do that, you'll notice that my foot has kind of joined in and wandered back as well. So I'm now resting that hip completely on the floor. This bottom leg is side on, the foot is pointing out to the side. Then I'm going to take myself back. So bring hands back to the floor, lift the hip, bring the foot back onto the mat, bring our hands back underneath, and back into my tabletop. Then we'll do the other side. So left foot comes forwards, Start with the heel on the mat. Take a little breath, walk the back foot as far as I can away. Bring the hand onto that thigh and lift. And I'm already trying to let the hips sink down to the floor a little bit as I encourage the hips to open out to the side. Got a little bit of a twist going on in the body. Chest is pointing over to the left side. Okay, I'm going to bring the hands to the floor again. Take that hand out to the side a little bit. Start to roll. Bring the foot back. So I can bring the hip down to the ground. And just allow myself to sit there. I can feel a very definite stretch down the side of my body under, I call that my undercarriage, the bottom side. It's quite strong on the shoulder. You have to kind of push away to lift the body up a little bit. Lengthen out through the bottom leg so the foot is flexed. Trying to make this bottom leg a little bit longer as it goes out. And then we'll bring the hands back onto the floor. Lift ourselves back up. And then bring ourselves back into tabletop. Now we're going to take a down dog from here. So just bring the shoulders over the wrists, tap the toes underneath, and lift ourselves up. We won't be here for very long. It's just to stretch the legs out. Let the hips realign themselves a little bit. This is a steady version of down dog. We're drawing the thighs in towards the hips, feeling like the legs are lifting in towards the body. Tailbone lifting up towards the sky. Heels are off the floor, but pointing towards the back of the mat. Trying to get a little closer to the back. Making sure there's no gaps under the hands. Almost there. That's good. We'll bring it back into plank and let the knees come to the floor. And as we arrive, we're going to take the right knee to the outside of the right wrist and bring the heel under the groin and slide and walk the left foot back as far as we can. And then we're going to lift the body up and start to walk the hands out in front, about shoulder distance apart. We'll slide them out gently and bring the body as low as we can to the floor. Now, I'm not going to quite rest on the ground. I want to be an inch or so at least off the flat. Press into the hands and you press down and push back a little bit. And then you lengthen that long leg as far away as you can. Keep the belly drawn in a little bit. Now, obviously, if you're not able to come this low, you just come down onto your elbows. And the same thing applies as you press down and you push back a little bit. Lengthen that back leg away, way, 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 way. And then we'll use the fingers to walk back in. Just start to move the hands, bigger chunk. We'll come back into that tabletop position. Bring your knees back underneath the body. And then we'll do exactly the same, just taking the left knee out. Bring the heel under the groin. Slide gently. Right foot back. So the hips get a little lower to the floor the whole time. That's happening. And then you're going to take the hands out again. Just come down nice and easy. Make sure that the knees, ankles, hips, and shoulders feel happy about the whole idea of coming down this low. And then getting down, drawing the belly in, press into the hands, and lengthen that back leg away. And we'll use the fingers to walk in. Bring ourselves back. So we'll lift up into down dog one more time. And we'll come slowly forwards and we'll bring ourselves into child's pose. We'll sit back, take the hands all the way to the toes, head to the floor, if not using a block underneath. And to bring the hands forward again. And we're just going to slide them to the front of the mat to a point where we can bring our belly to the floor. We're going to come into low cobra and then follow that with some geckos. So we'll bring the hands more or less underneath the shoulders and the elbows squeeze into the ribs a little bit. Just draw the shoulders back a little, lengthen the legs out, have the feet at least hip distance apart, and if you can, toes in, heels out. Spend a little time in lengthening those legs away. And then on inhale, we're going to lift the chest without really putting any weight into the hands. And then taking a slow exhale to come back. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. Inhaling gently. Exhaling gently. And then the gecko pose, same position, but we take the hands out wide, gently, come up onto the fingertips, have the elbows up towards the sky. Now, if your shoulders are wrapped up around the sort of the back of the neck and the ears, you want to just draw them back a little bit, spread them out a little wider. And then the biggest change, apart from pressing down into the fingertips, is the fact that we exhale on the way up. Let the ribs come clear from the floor, if they can. And then inhale on the way down. Exhale on the way up. Inhale on the way down. Press into the fingertips and draw the spine up and along. Avoid pulling the head back. Try and lengthen the legs out as much as you try and lengthen the spine out. Keep everything safe. Come up one last time. And come back. Now we'll bring the hands down to the bottom of the ribs, shoulder blades back a little bit. Peel away from the floor. Bring ourselves back. Just gently onto our knees for a moment. And I'm going to take my brick and my block and just place them out in front. And I'll have the block just sitting across, or the brick rather, sitting across. So not super high, but it's, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches off the ground, something like that. So take the hands forwards and come into that tabletop position. Draw the foot on the right forwards. Allow myself to take the hands as far forwards as I can, comfortably. Tuck the toe on the back foot underneath. So I'm lifted up off of the ground. I'm going to move the brick and the block so the brick is now in line with my front hand. Bring both hands onto that. Take a little breath, and I'm going to press into the back foot, lean into the front knee a little bit, and lift myself slowly up. Now you might need to move the brick and the block a little bit further forwards. That's not a problem. We can do that. That's right, my fingertips, and then we try and press the heel of the hand down again. Try to keep the hips nice and square, and draw the body lengthening out of the pelvis. So it's kind of getting nice and long. And we're trying to have that rear foot about the same height as the hip. We do our best to press out through both legs. So one is pressing out, and one is pressing down, but it feels like they're pressing out from the center of the body. And we try and keep the hips square to the ground, so the front hip bones feel like they're the same distance from the floor. You can take a little breath, soften the front knee, and plant the back foot to the floor again. Just bring the hands back and leave the blocks where they were. Bring ourselves back down gently onto our hands and legs. Take a moment. And then we'll bring the left foot forwards. Reach forwards with the hands onto the block. Take the toe on the back foot. Lift again. Chance to wriggle around and find your balance. And then lean forwards and lift up at the same time. Make any little adjustments you need with the block. To offset that a little bit more. There we go. And then draw the body long. Try to keep the head in line. Shoulders are broad away from the ears. And we lengthen out through both legs. And then lengthen, and then lengthen. And then when you've done that, you lengthen a bit more. And soften the front knee. Move the back foot to the floor. Bring the hands back. Bring ourselves back onto all fours. We're going to take the knees wide, and we'll come into the wide version of child's pose. Hands are all the way out. Elbows are off the ground. And we'll take this into a side bend to the right. Have the hands about shoulder distance apart. So pretty much resting the ribs on the thigh on that right side. The belly in a little bit. The tailbone towards the back of the mat. Feel that difference in the stretch down the spine and the side of the body. Lift up. And take ourselves over gently to the opposite side. Again, try and have those hands about shoulder distance apart. Ease yourself in and just draw the belly in a little bit and swing the tailbone back. You'll feel strange straightening and lengthening down the side of the body as you try and take your bottom away from your head. And bear in mind that it really didn't move anywhere. The sensation of stretch increases quite considerably. Drawing the bottom away. Slowly bring ourselves back into the center. Take a little breath. Ease our way back up. Now I'll take my bricks and blocks with me. And so to just swing the feet out to the side and come into a seated twist. So legs slowly move out to the front of the mat. Sit up nice and tall. Feet come together so they touch. And then we'll take the left leg underneath. Take that out towards the side of the hip. And you want to have that left knee pointing forwards. So it's pointing in the same direction as your front hip bones. We'll take the right leg across, draw the foot in. Take a little breath. Now I'm going to take the left arm up and come across to the right. So it's a closed twist. That right hand comes back just in line with the right hip. The arm and leg brace against each other. And then I tilt the pelvis forwards a little bit. So I lift the spine up from the base. And then if it's possible, turn the head gently to look over the rear shoulder. And then we can release. From there, we'll take it all the way to the other side. And then we'll release from there as well. We're going to come into Baddha Konasana. We're bringing the soles of the feet together, but we're going to take what I would call the long version. So the gap between the ankle and the knee is the same distance between the knee and the hip. So as you look down, you've got like a little diamond shape starting to form. The wriggle on the cheekbones from side to side as the soles of the feet meet, and then let myself wriggle and sit further forwards. And I'm going to take the hands forwards then. That might be as comfortable as it feels to get, and that's okay. You might just want to stay there. You might be able to take the hands further forwards and get down lower, just letting the body open the hips. Some people like to actually take their hands underneath the legs and through. So it gets slightly more rounded back when they do that. So they have to then think about moving the feet a little further, even away than you had before. Some people will be literally lying on the ground in this pose, and that's fine. And some of us will be almost vertical, and that's fine as well. Where your back will let you get to. Obviously the hips are opening now, but they've done a little bit of work this morning already, so they're kind of a little bit more accepting about the whole idea. This is to really get the stretching into the spine. So keep the belly drawn into support. Ease our way back out. So using the hands to help with that. Just use the hands to draw back in. And I'm going to take the spine in a different direction, and I'm going to use one brick, and it's going to be going across underneath the back of the pelvis. So I'm going to just have the knees high and use the hands behind to roll down, but you could ride down to the side of the shoulders and the spine doesn't feel that that's a good idea. And then we're taking the brick and just lifting the hips a little, sliding that underneath the back of the pelvis. Make sure it's not sitting on the spine at all, really important. And then I'm going to take the hands up towards the sky and drop them to the floor behind. Now you want to be in a position where your forearms and your wrists are on the ground. So if you need to take them out all the way to side to crucifix style, anywhere between straight above your head and straight out to the sides is fine. It needs to be comfortable and open, no hanging around in the air. And then we're going to stay here for a little bit, a few breaths, and then we're going to consider whether we want to stay here or whether we want to move deeper into this variation of bridge pose. So at the moment, we're keeping the knees pretty much tracking over the top of the feet. Letting the lower back kind of get used to the idea that we're just taking ourselves from a big flexion to a mild extension. Now, it would be nice if we could add into this the hip flexors a little more. So I'm going to use my toes, slowly wriggle my right foot towards the corner of the right side of the mat at the front. And then when it gets to the point where I can no longer claw my toes to gain a little bit more distance, slide the heel out and let the leg roll out. See how it feels in my back. Now, if there's any pinching or causing of the breath being held, then I would suggest bring the foot back. You need to just get the body used to that first phase. But if this is okay in the lower back, then you can wriggle your left foot slowly. And the reason we use the toes to kind of claw our way forwards is we want to keep the nerves in the lower back nice and relaxed as we lengthen out. If we tighten up as we come into this because we do it too quickly, then the nerves will all jam up, and then that holding of the breath that we talked about takes place. So build some confidence into this feeling. Just a gentle lift. We're only lifting a couple of inches off the ground. Now to bring ourselves out of this, we'll slowly slide the right heel until it feels like it's in a position where it can add a little bit of help. Same with the left. Bring those feet a little closer. We'll take the hands back towards the side of the body. We'll stay here again for just a few breaths. And feel how the weight shifts through the spine. Just the difference of having the hands by the side of the body. The last breath here. You draw the belly in a little bit, just press down through the shins, lifting the thighs. Take the weight out of the block that's underneath, and we just move it out to the side. And then we take a breath or two to allow the spine to come back down to the floor. And from here, we'll take our resting Shavasana. So let's slide the heels out again. Now one heel to lengthen out of the side. To soften the jaws down as close. Begin to breathe a little deeper. Start to wriggle toes and fingers. So to have a nice stretch. And then when you're ready, we'll draw the legs in and allow yourself to have a little bit of a hug. Rock from side to side, wherever feels good. And then when you're ready, we're going to roll on to the right side and draw ourselves into a little bit of a ball. Using the hand over the head to give ourselves a little bit of a pillow. We can lift from here on the next now. Back into a nice seated posture. So hopefully a gentle stretch into kind of major parts of the body and some restorative work as well. Hands in towards your heart as we finish our class, closing the eyes, taking a breath in. Exhaling, we let the chin drop and bow to the floor to seal the practice. And the inhale will lift the body back up with the breath. Open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Have a wonderful weekend.